Hi, everyone. It's great to be back at Glue. I am assuming this is my clicker. OK, awesome. So my name is Julia Ferraioli. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I know what it means, so that's all that matters. I am a developer advocate for Google, specifically working on the cloud platform. I want to talk to you today about what I'm terming the hierarchy of developer needs. This is not my remote. OK. So while I do work on the cloud and I like to give technical talks, this is a community talk. So you won't see any code. I'm sorry. Maybe next time we'll work on that. So just as a bit of context, I want to talk a little bit about how I got here. What makes me qualified to talk about developer communities? Well, I started in research. I worked on machine learning, specifically developing new types of clustering algorithms and new ways of exploring data. And I said, OK, this is interesting. I worked with a lot of machine learning packages. Shout out to Weka and some other graphing packages as well, before saying, OK, I want to go and try my hand at software engineering. So I worked on an online document collaboration service that is no longer available, so you can't try it out. But I did some back-end and front-end work there. And then decided, nope, once they shut my project down, I'm going to go back to research. And still in machine learning, still in artificial intelligence, but moving towards the assistive tech. So I worked on tools for folks with learning disabilities, folks that have low vision. And over this time, I got to know some developer communities really well. I got to know the SourceForge developer community really well. And the support that I got off of SourceForge was awesome. I would send out an email, or I'd post a message, and I'd say, I have a really weird question, something odd is going on, and then I'd never hear back. But today we've got so many awesome communities growing up. You've heard from some of them, and this is basically one big developer community here. You've got all of the folks in the booths that have platforms. And so I moved towards developer relations, and my job is to make people successful with Google APIs, Google platforms. That's where I find a lot of satisfaction in my life. And I've gotten to observe various communities in my role now. So I gave a talk about 6 months ago. And we had kind of a brainstorming session. We were trying to figure out, well, what motivates our developers? And we came up with some of these. Some of them I left off. But you can take a look and see that in some cases, you really have different things that motivates them. This isn't what they're working towards, but it gives them meaning in their development. So you have the folks who are really looking for self-improvement. They want to pick up new technology. Maybe they're looking to get back into the job market and update their skills. You have the folks who are they're driven by utilitarianism. They want to create an amazing product, and that's where they find their satisfaction. There are folks like me who are attracted to shiny objects. I don't know, this might describe some of you as well. I want to play with the latest and greatest framework, the latest and greatest technology. That is where I find a lot of satisfaction. You tend to find that a lot in developer relations. I know there are some of you in here. But I was wondering, can we actually think about what makes a good developer experience by moving past the needs and looking towards the resources? So who here is familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs? This may look familiar. It's different layers of what we need to be self-actualized human beings, right? You start with the physiological, food, water, et cetera. Move up to safety and interpersonal and self-esteem. And then we can kind of be the best people we can be, right? And can we apply this to our developers? And specifically, if you have an API that you are putting out for public consumption, can this help you? So I started thinking about, well, what's my own personal hierarchy of needs? So I totally did not draw this on the plane, I promise. And maybe it was because of the plane that some of these wound up on there. But at the very base, I need a terminal. I need a way that I can access my editor, my compiler, et cetera. It can be on my machine. It can be on my neighbor's. Don't really care. But then I need a way to find my resources, and I go to, well, the internet. It's great. I no longer have to download JavaDoc to use it. It's kind of amazing. I'm an inherently social programmer, so I need to have my colleagues, my friends, my user groups that I can go to and bounce ideas off of. And only then can I get to where I'm running and then being absolutely productive and coding. It doesn't mean that I can't get there earlier, but this is going to set me up for success. But this is my personal one. So how can we really generalize it? And I see various companies, when they're putting forth APIs and platforms, they make kind of a common mistake. And this may sound familiar. I'm a developer. I know what my developers need. It's so tempting. You saw a need for your platform. You're providing a service, so you obviously would use it as well, right? And I'm here on behalf of your developer community to say, please stop that. It's important to note that when you're talking about an API that you've engineered, maybe you wrote the design doc, you were the lead software engineer on the API, you have access to resources that your developers do not. That may be the source code, the documentation, the internal bug tracker. It could be access to the engineers themselves. Or it could just be the time that you've had to internalize it. But as soon as you make that shift in thinking and say, OK, I am not my developer, you can really start to think about how you need to support your community. So I'm in a privileged position, right? I have a question with BigQuery, Google's productized Dremel, and I walk outside my office and I say, I have a problem with my load job. I don't understand what's going on. And they answer it for me in 5 minutes. My developer community, who might have the same problem, doesn't have that ability. It's going to take them way more time. So I started to think about, OK, let's step outside that bubble and say, well, what is a good hierarchy of needs for developers in terms of concrete resources? So this is my first effort. And you'll see it's titled My Mistake. So the labels here aren't really important, though I'm happy to see it came out so well. But I looked at it and I thought about it. And I was like, OK, well, I need reference docs. That's bare minimum. All the way up to courses. And so that's a good nice to have, maybe. But I realized that this will work on occasion. This will work great for developers like me, who are looking to accomplish what I'm looking to do, which is release open source projects, illustrative code. I don't work on production code anymore. So this will work great for people like me, but it won't work for all of my developers. It's a really egotistical thing to do, right? So we need to step again outside of that. And you have to start to ask your developers and find out who they are. And you can do this in several ways. You can do it kind of by hitting the pavement, immersing yourself in the community, and learning through absorption. You can do it in a structured and informal way of engaging ad hoc, online or at meetups. And the way that I found most useful, although it's costly in terms of hours and just in terms of tabulation, is doing research. So send out surveys. Find out who your developers are, what motivates them, where you're falling short for them. But don't just hit your developers. Hit your entire community, right? Hit developers who are not using your APIs, because there's probably a reason. OK, so once you know who your developers are, you can kind of move forward and play a little bit of buzzword bingo, right? We all see it at conferences, but this is actually a useful exercise, is to develop these profiles. And you'll find out that the profile of your average enthusiast is going to be much different than a founder or even an enterprise engineer, right? Your enthusiast is going to consume all the resources you put out. They're going to come to you. Your founder is looking to crank out their minimum viable product, right? They need to do it quickly, efficiently. They need resources targeted towards their use case. The enterprise engineer wants to see the white papers, the performance benchmarks, and so that they can create the most maintainable code that's going to be best for their company. And what you'll start to realize is that there's no one hierarchy to rule them all, right? I'm not going to say that every profile is going so far as saying it's a special snowflake, but you need to come to terms with the fact that your approach is going to be different depending on who you're targeting. So let's go back to my mistake, right? Is this an inherently bad hierarchy? No, it tells me, okay, given people like me, I want to spend a lot of time on reference docs. This is basically a way to allocate prioritization to where we should spend our time. But can we turn it into something a little bit more useful? And I think we can. So we shuffle it around a bit. So this hierarchy might be for somebody that's looking to educate themselves. They don't have a particular project in mind, right? They're looking to familiarize themselves with a new technology so that when the project does come up, they can say, oh yeah, I know that stuff, I can handle it, pick me. Or how about this? The inherently social programmer. You'll note that there are two new items here, the user groups and the showcases. These are not technical resources, and yet they're so important. You find a way for them to collaborate with others and then work your way up to showing off what they've built for you. It's a way of giving back to your community. And the last one adds in a new type of support, which is the paid support. If this is your enterprise engineer, they want to know if they're building a business on top of your API, that they're going to get support when something breaks or when they encounter a roadblock. And that becomes incredibly important for your enterprise engineer. OK. So I've shown you, I actually didn't count, but a number of different hierarchies, right? And you might be saying, well, which one do I choose? Well, you have to figure out who your developer is and target. There is no recipe. There's active listening. There's asking questions. There's no template here. So what happens if your hierarchy goes awry? You're finding out that you're not getting the developers you thought you would. You want to maybe pivot a little bit and start a different developer program. Well, you start debugging. And this is going into the launch and iterate model, right? OK, you haven't found the developers you want. Go in, see where your resources are missing. See where there's a mismatch between your developer needs and your developer resources. There's always the possibility that the developers you get are going to be your strongest allies, even if they're not the ones you expected. So go out, listen to your developers. Think about this model of a hierarchy when figuring out how to support them. And build up great developer communities. They'll return the favor. So thank you, everybody. I'm more than happy to take questions, though I think we're running out of time. So you can engage me afterwards as well.
We can do a quick question. Anyone have a question for Julia? Did I scare you? Came out of nowhere.
I know. You're like, it goes there.
We good? All right, Julia. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.